Hey, Two Cities family, Pastor Stephen here, and welcome to our 6th week of our One Initiative. We're here with Tyler Ristamuno, former resident, but now our Associate Director of Students, and today we're going to be talking about apologetics. And so, Tyler, you are a recently graduated master's student. So what is apologetics?
Well, I think the technical definition of apologetics is to be able to refute and argue for the faith, but specifically in discourse. I actually think we might think about apologetics as being this top-shelf, academic, intellectual practice that some Christians can do if they've done enough studying, if they've had enough practice, when realistically, I believe apologetics more so is the defending of the faith through life and action. It's not something reserved for some, but something that all Christians are called to do in the way that they live, act, and interact with the people that are around them.
You we've talked about often that the right context for this type of interaction is really in relationships. So I wonder, most of us, we've grown up in church otherwise, we are taught about presentations. I wonder how you try to locate apologetics in a relationship.
Well, I think when it comes to going after and pursuing the people in my life who are close to me but far from God, it's just getting to know them. To steal a line from a famous show right now is, it's much better to be curious than it is to be critical. I think when people have different opinions than us or people have different beliefs than us, it's easy for us to be critical with the things that they present. But in truth, when we're curious, when we ask questions, when life happens and you ask for the why, you get to know the person better. I mean, Jesus asked like 300 and something questions when he was here on earth, and that was a majority of his ministry. If you look through the Gospels, very rarely does Jesus give straightforward answers. Most of the times he just asks back better questions. And from there, he's almost setting aside the what in search of the why. I think it's because Jesus knows that finding the why is to then discover more about the person. And everything is about the person. Like, our faith is about the person of Christ. It's not about the what. It is about the what, but it's more about the why. And so, relationally, if you can dig deeper to the why by asking questions, and even simple ones, I think whenever I'm thrown off by somebody asking me a question or being like, why are you a Christian? Why do you believe the things that you do? Like, what are you doing with your life? The question I'll ask back is like, well, what are you doing with yours? Like, why do you believe the things that you do? And allow that like conversation to happen in real time. But then also to use language like, help me understand when you have a difference. I think the reason that relational apologetics is so much more effective than discourse-based apologetics or argument-based apologetics is you're talking with someone that you know, and through asking the questions, you're getting to know them more. And so to get to know them is to have them feel heard. And as people, our greatest desire is to be known and our greatest fear is to be rejected. And so I think that's why most people in our world are confused about all the things. They're seeking for answers, they're looking for stuff, but in reality, they want to be known themselves, but they're afraid that if someone knows them, that they'll be rejected. So to ask them questions and get to know them and not be the person who's just like, whoa, if you believe that, we can't be friends anymore. If that's your thought, then we can't actually talk. But to be able to be like, oh, okay, that's interesting. Can you help me understand why you think that? Can you help me understand why that makes sense in your brain, in your mind, in your heart? It opens up to the deeper levels where then you can present Christ to the real person, to the person that they actually are.
I remember the switch kind of happened in my mind whenever our residency cohort read through Questioning Evangelism, a book by Randy Newman. And he was just trying to take the pressure off that so often we think that it's our responsibility to have an answer for every question. And granted, we're going to give answers, about to get to that. But what would it look like if we took that pressure off and began to respond to questions with insightful questions? So I wonder, what's a way that you can encourage us, maybe how you've learned, but how can we be better question askers?
Yeah. Again, I mentioned it a minute ago, but really to zoom in on it, it's be curious. If you're asking a question to try and lead them to an answer, I don't think the question will ever be maybe the right question. But
Yeah.
when you're just asking a question to be curious to understand, all of a sudden it opens up all the doors in the conversation to get deeper. And yeah, I mean, we are called to present the gospel and to pursue people who do not know Christ, but we are not the ones that change their hearts.
Yeah.
And so since we're not the ones that change their hearts, all we can do is ask. All we can do is ask the questions that come to our minds, the simple questions, the easy questions, and be genuinely interested in what they have to say. They'll usually respond, at least in my experience, whenever I'm asking questions that I genuinely am like, yeah, tell me more, and I want to know the answer, they'll usually ask me questions that open the door for me to then speak about Christ. But it takes the pressure off. That book was incredibly helpful for me in how student ministry works. I mean, when you're working with middle schoolers, you're working with high schoolers, and that is a season where you probably feel the least known, but you also don't know how to become known. It's like, nobody understands me. I don't know what's going on. All of a sudden, you have someone who can ask good questions. They feel known. It's like, okay, like I can open up. I can start to explore these things that maybe I was scared to explore about myself before.
Sure. So at some point, though, we've got to move to the what. If we're asking questions, we're around the why. Maybe we feel like we're circling the house, right? We wonder if we just need to go up and knock on the front door. How can you just challenge us to really get to the what and when we're trying to share the gospel?
Yeah, I think when you ask questions, people will want to ask questions back. And so while you're asking and being curious, you have to pray up and be ready and be like, Lord, give me the strength and give me maybe not the answers, but the words. I think I've changed in my own life the prayer from, Lord, give me answers to, Lord, just give me your words to speak well, so that when they ask the question back, it's like, okay, now let me tell you the what. Now let me tell you where my hope is found. Now let me tell you why I do the things I do. Now let me tell you why I'm different in the way you're asking that I'm different, or whatever it may be. Because again, because it's relational, you're living life alongside them. Because you've made an intentional effort to get to know them, consequentially, they've gotten to know you. And so they've seen it in action, and now you get to share with words, and all of a sudden it's like the final connection point in the puzzle where the whole picture comes together, and it's like, oh, okay. But we do have to know. We have to be in the Word ourselves. We have to, be in community where we can bounce our ideas off of one another and truly understand and read the Scriptures together and all those things so that you have the what. But the what is still, again, going to be backed up by the fact that you were curious so that they would ask, and that you've been living relationally with them so that they would see.
Yeah. And I think, too, just to conclude, to trust, in some sense, the relationship. And the way what I mean that is if you have a relationship where you can ask these questions, then once you ask the questions, you're going to see them again. So maybe that initial conversation doesn't yield the fruit you're expecting, but when they go and think on it, sleep on it, whatever else, they're going to be coming back. But then finally, just to trust the Spirit of the Lord. I love how Tyler is reminded that it is our prayer that the Lord would give us words. And it's amazing. When you're in these conversations, you know when the door's open. And not only that, but you know the words to say. So that's our prayer for you as you go out and begin to be curious, relational Christians. Again, trying not only to share the what of who the Lord Jesus Christ is, but also the why as we try to reach our ones.